This is Project 4L60E, Part 2, Lesson 9. In this lesson, we'll work on and install the last major subassembly of the 4L60E, the valve body. Begin by getting it from the pan where we set it during disassembly, and setting it on a clean work area like so. Place shop towels to help stop parts from rolling off the bench. Pull the manual valve out and set it aside. Your valve body may have some or all of the old gaskets stuck to it. If this is the case, wear gloves and carefully scrape the pieces off. Try not to gouge the casting or let the gasket flakes fall into the channels. When finished, turn the casting over. Use an 8mm socket and remove these two bolts. Set them aside. Lift off the manifold pressure switch assembly and set it aside. Use a small screwdriver to remove the 3-to-2 solenoid retaining clip. You may have to turn the casting over to get to it. Twist and pull it out. Replace the retainer onto the solenoid and set it aside. On 1996 and up models, tilt the casting over and let the 3-to-2 control valve and spring fall out. Look closely at the spring. 50% of the time you will find it broken like this one. It will be replaced later. Set them aside. Use your thumb to hold shift solenoid A in and remove its retaining clip. Slowly release your thumb and let spring pressure push it out. Place the clip back on the solenoid and set it aside. Tilt the casting and let the 1-to-2 shift valve and spring fall out. Set them next to the solenoid. Remove the clip retaining shift solenoid B. This one is not under spring pressure. Twist and pull it out. Replace the clip. Set them next to solenoid A. Use a mechanic's pick and carefully work the 2-to-3 shuttle valve out. Set it next to the solenoid. Now work the 2-to-3 shift valve out with a pick. Look for spools like this one to pry against. And this one. You have access to the valve from both sides. Work patiently and lightly with the pick to avoid scratching the valve. Note that this longer end of the shift valve came out last. Set it as it came out in front of the shuttle valve. Use an 8mm socket to remove the bolt which fastens the retainer for the electronic pressure control solenoid. Pull out the solenoid and set it aside. Remove the 3 8mm headed bolts which fasten the forward accumulator cover. Set the cover and bolts aside. Remove the low overrun spring and valve. Set them with the cover like so. Remove the forward accumulator spring and set it with the cover. Pull the center pin out 1/2 inch and work it and the piston out. Like the plastic 1 to 2 accumulator piston, this forward accumulator piston is also made of plastic. Never reuse this piston. They eventually crack and break around the center pin here. The result is no forward engagement when the transmission is placed into drive. Set the pin and piston next to the spring. An area of severe wear on 1995 and later valve bodies is the bore for the torque converter clutch regulator valve located here. The introduction of the PWM, or pulse width modulation solenoid, and the constantly varying converter clutch apply strategy of the ECM in 1995 and up vehicles causes a rapid and abrasive chafing movement of the valve. This damages its bore, allows leakage, and converter clutch slippage. If your transmission is a 1995 or later version and has the PWM solenoid like the one we removed from this area in Part 1, Lesson 3, we need to remove it. Here's the clip from Part 1, Lesson 3. If you'll recall, this is the PWM solenoid found only on 1995 and later models. I'll discuss two solutions for the problem of the worn regulator valve later. If you are working on a 1995 or newer model, begin valve removal by placing your fingers over the retaining clip and pry it out with the pick. Set it aside. Use the pick to work the end plug out. Set it next to the clip. Tilt the casting and tap it with your palm. The regulator valve, spring, and isolator valve should come out. If not, work them out with the pick. Set them down in order as removed. Most of the time, further disassembly of the valve body is not necessary. Use the pick to make sure the rest of the valves move freely. For example, gently pry on the 3 to 4 shift valve located here. And the 3 to 4 relay valve located here. Both of these valves move as they should. If you find a valve which is stuck, remove the clip or roll pin retaining the valve and work it and its return spring out with the pick. Set them aside in the order they were removed. At this point, clean the casting with mineral spirits and blow it dry with compressed air. If the transmission you're working on has 75,000 or more miles on it, the converter clutch regulator valve bore has significant wear. This is a very common problem with 4L60Es. Even if your vehicle's ECM is not currently indicating code 1870, we need to use one of two solutions now to prevent this problem from occurring. Solution 1 is for 1995 through 2000 models only. Get the replacement spring from the kit. This spring replaces the shorter original one used in the 1995 through 2000 valve lineup. It cannot be used in 2001 and later models. Place the isolator valve in first. Install the new spring next. Replace the regulator valve as removed. Finally, push the end plug in and reinstall the retaining clip. This arrangement actually coil binds the spring, preventing the regulator valve from moving into the worn area of the bore. There will be no pressure leak, torque converter slippage, or code 1870. However, this solution does defeat the vehicle's EC3 or partial converter clutch apply strategy. Control of the clutch is now limited to on or off. Solution number 2 is for 1995 and up valve bodies and restores the regulator valve assembly to as new condition. You'll need this reamer and replacement valve assembly made by the Sonax company. There are 2 valve kits depending on application. Part number 77754-03K is for 1997 and earlier non-EC3 valve bodies. Part number 77754-04K is for 1998 and up, including all with the EC3 strategy. The reamer is part number 77754-R2. I'll demonstrate how to use this tool and install this new assembly. I place a 1/4" drive 14mm socket onto the end of the reamer in order to drive it in with a small ratchet. Turn the casting over and let it hang off the bench like this. Place a container underneath to catch the metal chips. Place the reamer into the empty converter clutch regulator bore and turn it by hand. This will take several minutes. Keep reaming until this shoulder reaches the casting. Once again, clean the casting in mineral spirits and blow it dry. Make sure your workspace is clean and set the casting down. Place fluid on the valves we didn't remove. Use the pick to make sure they move freely. Get the new regulator valve kit. Our 2004 demonstration transmission needs valve kit number 77754-04K. Make sure you read the instructions carefully. The isolator valve can be installed 2 ways depending on model year. Put fluid onto it. According to the instructions, for the 2004 model year, it should be installed with the closed end in first. Use the pick to push it in all the way. Place the spring in next. The new regulator valve comes packed with a clear petroleum gel to hold it in the sleeve. Put fluid on the sleeve. Push it into the bore and replace the clip. This procedure restores the full EC3 or partial converter clutch application ability of the valve body. Here's a comparison of solutions 1 and 2. Solution 1, kit spring. The spring is already included in the kit. No additional charge, no special tools needed. Drawback: defeats original partial torque converter clutch apply strategy. Solution 2, install new valve. Completely restores valve body with full EC3 capability. Drawback: expensive tool plus additional cost of the valve kit. Bottom line, do-it-yourselfers will be fine in most cases simply using the spring included with the overhaul package. Professionals and those not too concerned with the initial cost of the reaming tool should install a new valve assembly. Let's continue reassembling the valve body. Clean each part in mineral spirits as we get to them. Get the new aluminum Ford accumulator piston. Get the last D-ring from the accumulator subkit and install it in the piston groove. Put some fluid on it. Put the center pin and fluid into the bore. Push the new piston in. Set the accumulator spring in like so. Reinstall the low overrun valve and spring. Replace the cover and 3 bolts finger tight. Use an inch-pounds torque wrench and tighten to 120 inch-pounds. Clean this filter screen on the electronic pressure control well. After washing with mineral spirits, blow it dry. It should be free of any small particles. Set it into its bore like so and replace the retainer and bolt. Torque to 120 inch-pounds. Get the new shift solenoids. Turn the casting over. Put fluid on the 2 to 3 shift valve. Reinstall it in its bore. Do the same with the 2 to 3 shuttle valve. Remove the clips from the old solenoids. Install the new solenoid next. Make sure a new O-ring is in this groove. Push it in and replace the retaining clip. Put some fluid on the 1 to 2 shift valve and reinstall the spring and valve together. Install the other new solenoid and clip. Get the new manifold pressure switch. Set it on the valve body like so. Reinstall the short bolts in these holes finger tight. Turn the casting over and rotate it. We'll install the 3 to 2 control valve and new spring next. Look very closely at this spring. This spring is broken. This is a very common and easily overlooked problem with the 4L60E. Get the new spring, which comes in the overhaul package. Put fluid on the valve, put the new spring over the valve, and push them in part way. You will have to turn the casting on end to let them fully drop into the bore. Use a small screwdriver to make sure it strokes freely. Set the casting down with the pressure switch side up. Remove the clip and the old O-rings from the 3-to-2 solenoid and clean it with mineral spirits. Find the appropriate size new O-rings from the miscellaneous subkit. Install them and add some fluid. Push the solenoid in and replace the clip. Rotate the connector like so. Put fluid on the manual valve and carefully ease it in like this. The hole for the link should face outward. The valve body is now ready for installation, but we need to make 2 threaded pins to help guide it onto the separator plate. I bought 2 75mm long bolts at the hardware store with the same metric threads the valve body bolts have. I'll make guide pins from them. Cut the heads off with a hacksaw. Dress the ends to a tapered shape. Install the guide pins into the holes we used to align the plate and gaskets earlier. Get the manual valve link. Hook it into the selector lever here. There are 7 remaining check balls in the box. Get all 7. One of 2 ways to install the balls is to set them on their seats in the separator plate. The generous paper-free areas and the noticeable polishing at each seat make placement obvious. You can confirm that they're in the right holes by comparing it to the pockets in the valve body. Install the valve body by turning it over and bringing it directly over the separator plate. As you lower it down, engage the manual valve link. Set it down. Another installation method is to place the check balls into the pockets of the valve body and use transgel to prevent them from falling out. Like before, engage the manual valve. Lower it down onto the separator plate. At this point, let's pause and end this lesson. In the next and final lesson number 10, we'll begin by installing the valve body bolts and end with a completely assembled, almost new transmission. When you're ready, I'll meet you there.